The hospital monitor flatlined, and I died. Or so they thought. In that sterile New York City room, with the scent of antiseptic stinging my nose, I slipped away only to wake up 3 years later. My heart pounding, my body weak, but my soul ablaze with a truth that would unravel everything. My name is Ethan Carter, and I was erased. Not just from life, but from the heart of the man I loved and the twin brother I trusted. Growing up in Brooklyn, Eli and I were mirror images, same chestnut hair, same emerald eyes, same crooked smile that made people do double takes. But our souls, they couldn't have been more different. I was the dreamer, the one who wore his heart on his sleeve, sketching poetry in the margins of my journals. Eli was the pragmatist, always calculating, always one step ahead. We were inseparable, though, until Julian walked into our lives. Julian Hayes was a storm disguised as a man, a painter with a laugh that could melt winter. He moved into our apartment building in Williamsburg when we were 22. His canvases, splashed with bold colors, told stories of love and loss that made my heart ache. I fell for him first, hard and fast, during late-night talks over cheap wine, his fingers brushing mine as we debated art versus reality. We were building something real until the night of the accident. It was a rainy April evening. I was driving home from a poetry reading when a truck swerved into my lane. The world spun, glass shattered, and then nothing. I was pronounced dead, my body too broken to save. But I wasn't gone. I was trapped in a coma, lost in a limbo of memories, while Eli, my mirror, stepped into my life like it was a role he'd rehearsed. When I woke up in that hospital bed 3 years later, the world had moved on without me. My family thought I was dead. Julian thought I was dead. And Eli, he'd taken everything me name. My love, my life. He'd convinced Julian he was me, slipping into my skin with a precision that chilled me to the bone. I saw it in the hospital's outdated tablet. Scrolling through social media posts, Eli, posing as Ethan, with Julian's arm around him. Their smiles a mockery of the love we'd built. I wasn't just angry, I was consumed. Every heartbeat screamed for justice. I'd claw my way back from the grave to reclaim what was mine, even if it meant tearing apart the life Eli had stolen. The hospital discharged me with a warning: my body was frail, my recovery uncertain, but my will unbreakable. I had no money, no ID, nothing but a second-hand hoodie and a fire in my chest. Brooklyn hadn't changed much, same graffiti-streaked walls, same honking taxis, but I was a ghost in my own city. I tracked Eli to our old apartment, the one Julian and I had filled with dreams. Standing across the street, I watched them through the window. Julian's laugh, that same warm sound, cut me like a knife. Eli, wearing my favorite flannel, leaned in to kiss him. My fists clenched. That was my life. I needed a plan. Confronting Eli head-on would be suicide, always been the better liar. I had to be smart, to unravel his deception thread by thread. First, I needed proof I was alive. My death certificate was a hurdle, but a sympathetic nurse at the hospital, Maria, had seen my face and believed my story. She slipped me a copy of my medical records, whispering, "Be careful. Whoever did this to you, they're dangerous." Next, I needed to get close to Julian without tipping off Eli. I found a job at a coffee shop Julian frequented, a cozy spot called the Bean Haven in Greenpoint. I dyed my hair black, wore glasses, and went by Evan. The disguise was flimsy. But Eli's arrogance was my ally. He'd never expect me to rise from the dead. The first time Julian walked in, my breath caught. He was still breathtaking, his dark curls falling over his forehead, his paint-splattered jeans a testament to his endless creativity. He ordered a latte, his voice soft, and when our eyes met, I saw a flicker of recognition. "Do I know you?" he asked, tilting his head. My heart raced. "Just got one of those faces," I said, forcing a smile. He lingered, chatting about a new gallery opening, and I memorized every word, every gesture, storing them like treasures. But when Eli showed up, draping an arm around Julian's waist, my stomach twisted. Eli's eyes swept the room, sharp and predatory, but they slid past me. For now, I was invisible. Days turned into weeks. I watched them, learning their routines. Eli was meticulous, mimicking my mannerisms to perfection, but he couldn't fake my heart. Julian seemed happy, but there were cracks moments when he'd stare into space, his smile fading, like he sensed something was wrong. I wanted to scream the truth, to pull him into my arms and tell him I was alive. But I couldn't. Not yet. One night, closing the coffee shop alone, I found a sketchbook left on a table. Julian's. His signature was scrawled inside, along with a drawing of two figures embracing under a starlit sky. My fingers traced the lines, and tears stung my eyes. He was still painting us. I slipped the sketchbook into my bag. It was a piece of him, a piece of me, and I'd use it to get closer. The next day, I found the sketchbook and returned it to Julian at the gallery opening he'd mentioned. His face lit up with gratitude, and we talked for hours about art, about life, about the ache of losing someone you love. "I lost someone too," I said, my voice thick. "It's like half your soul is gone." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I know exactly what you mean." That night, I lay awake in my dingy motel room, replaying every word. Julian was still mine, even if he didn't know it yet. But Eli was a shadow I couldn't ignore. He'd stolen 3 years of my life, and I'd make him pay. The game was just beginning. The gallery opening became my bridge to Julian. Each conversation, each shared glance, was a step closer to shattering Eli's lie. But the closer I got, the more dangerous it became. Eli wasn't just playing a part that was rewriting our history, erasing me with every kiss, every whispered promise to Julian. I had to move faster. I started leaving clues. Small things, subtle enough to avoid suspicion, but sharp enough to pierce Julian's heart. I'd slip lines from my old poems into our conversations, phrases only the real Ethan would know. "The stars don't shine without you," I said once, watching Julian's face freeze. He'd heard those words before, in a love letter I'd written years ago. His brow furrowed, but he brushed it off, blaming nostalgia. I wasn't discouraged. Doubt was a seed, and I was planting a forest. At the coffee shop, I kept my disguise tight, but Eli was starting to notice me. One evening, he lingered after Julian left, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. "You're new here," he said, his voice smooth but laced with suspicion. "What's your story, Evan?" "Just a guy trying to get by," I replied, wiping the counter, my pulse hammering. He leaned closer, his smile ablaze. "Careful," he said softly. This city's full of ghosts. I wanted to lunge across the counter, to scream that I was the ghost he'd buried. But I held back. Patience was my weapon. That night, I dug deeper, hacking into Eli's social media with a burner laptop. His posts were a shrine to the life he'd stolen photos of him and Julian at art shows, vacations, even our favorite diner. But there was something off. In every picture, Eli's smile was too perfect, too calculated. Julian's, though, held a quiet sadness, like he was searching for something he couldn't name. I needed an ally. Maria, the nurse, was a start, but I needed someone closer to Julian. I found her at the gallery, Lena, Julian's best friend and a fierce curator with a knack for spotting fakes. I approached her as Evan, offering to help with an upcoming exhibit. She was skeptical but warm. And over coffee, I dropped another Cluedo reference to a painting Julian and I had worked on together. A mural of Brooklyn's skyline we'd never shown anyone. Lena's eyes widened. How do you know about that? Just heard Julian mention it. I lied, my heart racing. She didn't press, but I saw the gears turning. Another seed planted. Meanwhile, my bond with Julian grew. We'd meet at the gallery or the coffee shop, talking late into the night. He opened up about Ethan, how he'd changed after the accident, how he sometimes felt like a stranger. He's still my Ethan, Julian said, his voice breaking. But it's like part of him didn't come back. I wanted to tell him everything, to hold him and promise I was here. But Eli was always watching, always close. One wrong move, and he'd bury me again, this time for good. Then came the breakthrough. While cleaning the coffee shop, I overheard Eli on the phone, his voice low and urgent. No one can know, he said. It's handled. He's gone. My blood ran cold. Was he talking about me? Or was there something darker at play? I followed him that night, trailing him through Brooklyn's crowded streets to a dive bar in Bushwick. He met a man in a leather jacket. Their conversation heated. I couldn't hear much, but I caught one word: accident. My accident. The pieces clicked. Eli hadn't just taken advantage of my death, orchestrated it. The truck. The crash. My death. It was no coincidence. Rage surged through me. But so did clarity. I had to expose him. Not just to Julian, but to everyone. I started gathering evidence. Maria helped me access hospital records, confirming discrepancies in my case, missing toxicology reports, rushed paperwork. I tracked down the truck driver, now living in Jersey, and paid him a visit. He was a wreck, haunted by guilt. I didn't mean to. He stammered. The guy paid me to scare you. Not kill you. Who? I demanded, though I already knew. Some guy who looked like you. He whispered. Your brother. I left with a recorded confession, my hands shaking. Eli had tried to kill me. He'd taken my life, my love, my everything. And now I had proof. But exposing him would break Julian's heart. Could I do that to the man I loved? Could I destroy his world to reclaim mine? That night, Julian invited me to his studio. It was the first time I'd been there since the accident, and the sight of his canvases, our canvases, hit me like a tidal wave. He showed me a new painting, a portrait of Ethan with eyes that didn't quite match mine. Something's missing, Julian said, his voice soft. I keep trying to capture him, but it's not right. I took a risk. Maybe you're painting the wrong Ethan, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He froze, his eyes searching mine. For a moment, I thought he'd see through my disguise. But then he laughed, shaking his head. You're a strange one, Evan. I smiled. But inside, I was breaking. I was so close, yet so far. Eli's shadow loomed larger than ever, and time was running out. The truth was a blade, and I was ready to wield it. Eli's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a crime, and I had the evidence to prove it. But as I stood on the precipice of exposing him, I realized the cost. Destroying Eli meant shattering Julian's world. The man who'd mourned me, loved me, and unknowingly given his heart to a lie. Could I reclaim my life without breaking his? I started with Lena. I met her at a diner, sliding the truck driver's recorded confession across the table. Her face paled as she listened, her hands trembling. This can't be true, she whispered. Ethan Eli's been with Julian for years. He's not Ethan, I said, my voice steady. I am. Lena's eyes widened, but she didn't run. She listened as I told her everything: the accident, the coma, Eli's deception. When I showed her my medical records, her skepticism cracked. We need to tell Julian, she said finally. But carefully. He's fragile. Fragile. The word stung. Julian was strong, but love had made him vulnerable. I agreed to her plan. We'd confront Eli together, at the gallery's next exhibit, where Julian would be surrounded by friends. It was safer that way for him, and for me. The night of the exhibit, I stood in the shadows, my disguise abandoned. My hair was back to its natural chestnut, my glasses gone. I was Ethan again, in every way that mattered. The gallery buzzed with people, Julian's paintings glowing under soft lights. I saw him across the room, his smile strained as Eli stood beside him, playing the perfect partner. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. Lena signaled me, and I stepped forward, my recorded evidence ready. But before I could act, Eli's eyes locked onto mine. Time stopped. His face drained of color, and for the first time, I saw fear in my twin's eyes. He knew. Julian, I called, my voice cutting through the crowd. Heads turned. Julian froze, his gaze darting between me and Eli. It's me. Ethan. The room fell silent. Julian's face crumpled, confusion and hope warring in his eyes. What is this? He stammered. Eli moved fast, grabbing Julian's arm. He's an imposter, he said, his voice smooth but desperate. Some sick joke. But Lena was ready. She played the recording, the truck driver's voice echoing through the gallery. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Julian's hand slipped from Eli's, his eyes fixed on me. Ethan, he whispered, stepping closer. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. I never left you. Not by choice. Eli lunged, but security grabbed him, alerted by Lena. The truth poured out me: coma, Eli's plot, the stolen years. Julian listened, his face a mask of anguish. When I finished, he sank to his knees, sobbing. I knelt beside him, wanting to hold him but afraid to break him further. Why? Julian asked, his voice raw, looking at Eli. Why would you do this? Eli's mask shattered. Because I loved him too, he said, his voice breaking. I loved you, Julian. But you only saw Ethan. I thought, if I was him, you'd love me. The confession hung heavy, a twisted mirror of my own pain. Eli had betrayed me, but he was still my brother, still human. I hated him, but I understood him. And that was the hardest truth of all. The police took Eli away, his fate uncertain. Julian and I left the gallery, walking through Brooklyn's quiet streets. We didn't speak, but his hand found mine, his fingers trembling. At our old apartment, we sat on the fire escape, the city sprawling below us. I thought I lost you, he said finally, his voice thick. I painted you every day, trying to keep you alive. You did, I said, squeezing his hand. You kept me alive. We rebuilt slowly. Julian needed time to heal, to trust again, and I needed time to reclaim myself. We painted together, laughed together, cried together. The scars remained, but so did our love, stronger for having been tested. Eli faced trial, and I testified, not out of vengeance, but for justice. He'd stolen 3 years, but he couldn't steal my heart. Julian and I moved forward, not as we were, but as something new, two souls who'd found each other twice, against all odds. As we stood on the Brooklyn Bridge one evening, the city lights reflecting in Julian's eyes, I realized something. Life wasn't about reclaiming what was lost, it was about building something better from the ashes. I'd come back from the dead, not just for love, but for life itself. And with Julian by my side, I was whole.